So we're doing this set of things. Do we have any news things?
Just what I read you this morning.
I wasn't awake then.
I would have to get my phone and reread
Yeah,
it.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to do that. I would prefer to have a ... like 2 or 3 news stories you want to talk about.
The police officer was denied a retrial for George Floyd. George Floyd.
Sure. We can talk about that. Are you aware, before you started, are you aware of any of this crap going on in, I believe it's Ohio, where there was another shooting and the police officers were not indicted?
No.
Yeah, I know that there was, it's funny how this stuff seeps into your brain, because there was a shooting that occurred, and the victim's name has been all over the news, so even though I know no details of the shooting, the incident, any of it, I know he was the victim, it's just been out there, and it's subliminally, whatever, so that when, I know that, the 8 cops who killed so-and-so have been released, it's just it's supposed to, incite rage, and it's all I can think about is, that poor fucking cop, white dude, beacon of the community, who, the hands up, don't shoot crap, dude went for his gun, and they have all these riots, burn his town down in effigy, because he didn't go. How guilty do you have to feel for not going to jail for something that you shouldn't go to jail for, but other people die, and everyone loses their business, the community is destroyed, and they're blaming you?
I don't know. I think your career is over. I don't even know. Well, I don't even know that you would want to do it anymore. If this is the cost of me trying to do my job to the best of my ability, do you even really want to do that anymore?
I see what you're saying.
It's a career killer. Even if, what are you going to say? Let's say that you move to a different state across the country. It doesn't matter. And what are you going to say? Why did you leave your last job? Oh, well, because I was responsible for 1/3 of my city burning to the ground because of riots, because I thought I did the right thing.
Right.
How do you even, how do you start over?
I don't know. I mean, that's a good question, but here's the thing. In that case, unlike the what's his name?
George Floyd?
Yeah, I forget the cop's name, but I know it's out there. I know it's a famous name. I don't think I've ever heard the name of the cop who did the hands up, don't shoot down in Missouri. So I also feel like most of the people who are rioting and protesting and looting and all the things aren't from Missouri. These are people who were crisis actors who came in to stir the pot.
Sure, but that's the same thing that they said about the rioters, in D.C. Oh, they were all hired, and it's all. I mean, whether I believe it or not, whether I believe that they're actors or not, it's unverifiable. Who's gonna say percentage-wise these people were hired and those people were incited? So you hire 10 actors and 10 actors start a riot, and then because of the 10 actors, now you have 100 people who are rioting. How do you verify who was hired, who wasn't hired, who was an instigator, who, it's a great ploy.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, right? So, here's the big rub, is I feel like the January 6th, whatever you want to call them, riots, whatever. I mean, a lot of the footage that's been leaked now, where it's they're sitting, chanting and doing whatever protesters do at the door. And, the police open the door, they invite them in, why don't you come in? And it's at that point, is this just a ploy to get people into a place that they can later say, well, the piece of paper next to the door said don't come in, but the cop was saying come in, and you listen to the cop, and all of a sudden you're screwed.
So you're talking about DC riots,
Right. Right.
where everybody was arrested, and there was a shootout and people died, and
Right.
Trump incited the riot.
Right.
And you're talking about the new information that's coming out where the police basically invited them in for a tour of the White House.
Right. Or the congressional building. Yeah.
Sure. They invited them in for the tour of the congressional building.
Uh-huh.
And then, lo
Right.
and behold, how many years later?
Yeah, they still haven't been charged with anything, but they're still being held.
Right. But how many years has it been? Like 2?
2, yeah.
So 2 years later,
Right.
and now, lo and behold, by the way, here's footage of the police inviting them in,
Right.
but they're still being held without charge
Right.
at the police station or,
Well, like, what's
I'm guessing county?
there's so many parts to the January 6th thing that's
Yeah.
weird to me. So, like, I don't know if, like, this isn't, like, widespread news, but there was a legitimate bombing of one of the government buildings, I don't remember which one, down the street a few hours before this. Nothing to do with, like, the protesters, nothing to do with anything, just a bomb. And a lot of people think it was because all of the security got pulled from the protest to go investigate this bomb that happened. Like, I don't think anybody was hurt. Like, I think it was just like...
Did it even make the news?
No, it didn't. And like this is the part, like, when it doesn't make the news, it's when you go, what the fuck? It's like Building 7, Like, the Twin Towers come down.
Oh, that's right.
And, like, that's all over and everybody's talking about it. Like, another building goes down, no one talks about it.
Right.
And the reason why is because, what the fuck, no plane hit it. Like,
Right, but it was attributed to the 9/11.
Right, like, if you hear because it's like 2 blocks away, this other Building 7 or something like that.
Right.
So, like, what they basically said is the fire and rubble from the first 2, that there were tunnels leading to that building,
Sure.
and the tunnel was on fire, and the heat from the tunnel fire melted the beams, and the other building dropped. Which is like...
From an engineering standpoint, sounds ridiculous.
It does. It completely sounds just stupid. I mean, just all the stupid.
Yeah.
So, like, but that's my point, is the thing about the story that you feel like is important, that none of the news is wary of, just makes you think that, like, the news is in on it. But what I was going to say is that the part of the January 6th thing that's come to light,
Sure.
there's all these FBI agents that we know were in the crowd, and all of these people who are being accused and they're trying to railroad them are saying, look, there was a guy and he was inciting the crowd, and, like, why don't you find that guy? And lo and behold, when they find that guy, it was an FBI agent.
Again, like, that's where I say, like, how do you conflate the two? Like,
Right.
or unentangle them.
Uh-huh.
Because, I mean, I feel like everybody should know, but witness testimony is absolute crap. Like, trying to say...
No, absolutely.
Like, witness testimony is absolute
Witness
crap.
memory.
Witness and memory, but not just that. Like, even getting somebody to agree, getting a group of half a dozen people to agree on a singular suspect description.
Not to mention on, like, a traumatic event, like something where you're being investigated for, because typically speaking, if you're being investigated, there was wrongdoing.
Right.
And you're immediately going to lie a little bit to make yourself, like, because here's the thing, even if you didn't have anything specifically to do with what they're, like, let's say...
You don't want to be guilty of anything.
You don't want to be guilty of
even
anything.
by association or even by inference.
So, like, let's say, like, hypothetically, you worked at a bank and somebody robs it. You didn't rob it. You didn't rob it at all.
Sure.
But you think that Timmy did. And you didn't, like, supervise Timmy to the utmost, like, letter of the law. So you're going to lie and say that you did and almost cover for Timmy.
Sure.
In the sense that, like, because if he did it, it's your ass.
Right.
So, like, all of the accountability starts lying. And all of, like, the stories start fitting their own narratives for their own purposes.
Sure, because nobody wants to be the crime doer, right? Like, nobody wants to be caught.
Right.
But not only that, everybody wants to be either the hero or victim in their own story.
Right.
So either they're going to say, well, Timmy convinced me to do this, that, or the other. Like, Timmy told me to go get some water, and so I turned my back. So if he did something, it was his fault because he convinced me to turn my back to allow him to do whatever.
Right.
Or I was absolutely 100%, looking at Timmy the entire time, and I know for a certain fact that he absolutely did not do it. But either way, you've guaranteed that either you are the victim or the hero in your own story, because, and the ironic part of that is that Timmy might not have done anything anyway.
Right, but you just thought he did. But really, by covering for that, you're it's weird on like what is the same and what's not in stories, like how people memorize, like I just know, like when we argue, like you'll be like, I didn't say this, I know I didn't say this, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that you did, and it's like just the basic facts of what the argument are, you can't agree on.
Sure.
And I feel like, when you add tension and you add stakes and you add prison, potentially some of this, like...
And let's be honest, like, nobody likes to be on the opposite end of a police officer.
Right.
Like, doesn't matter if you're innocent or guilty, or if you have a felon, or if you don't, like, a felony, or if you don't.
Right.
It really doesn't matter. No one likes to be on the other end of a police officer.
Sure.
So, like, adrenaline kicks in, like, you're nervous, you're clammy, your, like, brain is fried.
And not to mention, like, with these FBI things, like, there's special laws, which I think are bullshit, where it's especially illegal to lie to an FBI agent.
Sure.
So, like, you say the most nuanced thing that they can say isn't 100% true, all of a sudden they've got you for lying. And that's what ended up happening with the one guy. The Trump general, who was going to be, like, the defense secretary or something like that. But yeah, like, they basically asked him a couple of questions, and he gave, like, kind of like an answer. I think they were even undercover, so he didn't even know that they were agents or something like that.
Sure.
And then they come back at him and say, well, you told an FBI agent this, and it was only 80% true, and you left out this, so therefore, you're looking at jail if you don't turn, and it's just like, what on earth?
Right. I think somebody used the, coffee analogy. Like, how many cups of coffee did you have? And he was like, I don't know, I had coffee. They're like, yeah, but how many cups? And he was like, 1?
Right.
And they're like, well, you had 2 cups, so you lied.
Right.
He's like, but I told you I had coffee. Like, I told you I went to the place. I told you I had coffee.
Right.
And they're like, yes, but you didn't say you had 2 cups of coffee. You said you had 1 cup.
Right.
And that to me is mind-blowing.
Right.
Like, you're really gonna...
Like, because, like, if you say, yeah, I had 2 or 3 cups of coffee, which was it, 2 or 3?
2 or 3.
And you're like, I don't know, 2, no 3. It ends up being 4. Like, what does it matter at that point?
Exactly.
Like, if I told you, like, it's in that spectrum, obviously I'm letting you know my memory's not 100%. Nobody's is. And it's like that's the idea that there is a body that can hold that over you is mind-blowing. It's just mind-blowing.
Sure. Well, then they take the, collaborative witness statements of everybody, and like, that to me, though, I mean, was it an FBI agent or wasn't it? Like, because the FBI is not going to come out and say, oh, yeah, it was us. We totally incited a riot.
Right.
But, like...
Well, it's like there was a thing the other day where, like, they came out with this, like, white supremacist cell, right?
Right.
And it ends up being that, like, let's say there's 10 members in the cell, right?
Sure.
None of them are different agencies that didn't know that the other members were different agents undercover.
Right.
And there was only one dude who was like the lowest ranking member that the 9 agents recruited.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, like, this, like, there's, like, this, God knows how long and how much money they spent, like, doing the sting operation thinking they got him. And then, then they, like, spring the trap, and it's like, freeze, you're under arrest. No, you freeze, you're under arrest. Okay. And it's like they've got this one 19-year-old idiot who's in there, and he's like, well, I guess you're going to have to pay for all this. And it's like, but wait, you recruited me, asshole.
Oh, God. That's ridiculous. But that really is, like, that to me is probably one of the most annoying things about government agencies, especially government police agencies, is that they're so unwilling to work with each other, and it's all a huge territory, like, pissing contest of, like, this is my sting operation, get out of my pool, get out of my whatever.
Sure.
And then it all comes down to, like, nobody's actually looking. What is it? The right hand isn't telling the left hand what the other one is doing.
Sure.
And so neither one of them have the full story.
Sure.
Or you have one of them who takes credit for the other guy's work.
Sure.
Which then just becomes an even bigger incentive to not work together.
Sure.
Like, that to me is just ridiculous. That
Right.
happens a lot with Border Patrol, where
Right.
Border Patrol will confiscate drugs at the border,
Right.
and then another agency will come in and say, like, oh, well, we were alerted, so we want credit for this.
Sure.
And really what it comes down to is funding.
Yeah, I got so many stories on this that I can't tell. Like,
Sure.
I want to. Like, I'm like, yeah, is there a way to word this? But
No.
then it's like, no, there's really not.
Yeah, no, but really what it comes down to is funding. Because if the DEA gets credit for the drug bust, then they get funding. But
Right.
if Border Patrol gets credited,
Sure.
then Border Patrol gets funding.
Sure.
And so instead of splitting the difference and hoping that each of them get equally funded, which is
Right.
never going to happen, like, they will do whatever it takes to make sure that they get credit for the bust, which doesn't do anybody any favors because,
Right.
like, they're so busy competing, you wonder what gets by.
Right. So anyways, we watched a movie recently that I've been wanting to watch for a few years. Basically, since it came out, it basically got Horror Movie of the Year by all the review sites, but basically what they all said is there's this huge twist, and then I stopped. I was like, I feel like most of the reviews wanted to tell you, which now I'm going to do. We're going to
Oh, sure.
have
So,
a review.
spoiler alert. But what's movie?
Barbarian.
Oh, The Barbarian.
Yeah, I think it's just Barbarian.
Just Barbarian?
Right.
Sure.
So, I love the film, though in all fairness, I was watching a completely different movie than reality. And then, when I talked to you afterwards, you saw the same film I did, and then we were like, but I have questions. And then we went to, like, Google Answers, and then they're like, oh yeah, you were way the fuck off.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So they have it looks like a cut scene.
Right.
But so they made it like the cinematography of it makes it look like a cut scene, but it's
Right.
actually a memory scene.
Right, it's a flashback.
Right. So the flashback, but it is so not clear that it's a
Correct.
flashback. And so, yeah, at the end of the movie, we're like, is this leading up to a sequel? Who's this character that we didn't get closure on? Like, they just
Right.
came in and did some really interesting things that could or couldn't have.
Been related.
That was weird.
Because it takes place, I would imagine, in the 70s by the cars, like from the nature of the flashback.
Right.
But the problem is Detroit in and of itself is so run down, and there's so many old cars and old vehicles, like it's just a down-run thing where there's not a lot of new things, that when you actually look at the rest of the film, it doesn't look a lot different.
Well, I mean, to be fair, would have keyed me in more that it was a memory
Mm-hmm.
and not a flashback is if it had been more pointed at either signs, addresses, or company logos in showing, like, this is the new version from, let's say, the 70s.
Right.
And this is what it looks like now, current day.
Or just like a thing, 1970 or whatever.
I mean, if you want to be super clear, like,
Right.
yeah, you could just print it on the screen. But, like, they even tried to show the neighborhood, but the neighborhood was so drastically different that without actually, like, zooming in on an address
Sure.
or a street sign, it just looks like a suburban neighborhood.
Right.
And even then, like, if you think about it, like, yeah, maybe the dress and maybe the cars were, like, 70s-ish,
Sure.
but by and large, the flashback scene was mostly men.
Sure.
And let's be honest, like, men's fashion is
Jeans and a t-shirt, yeah.
jeans and a t-shirt, khakis and a button down.
Right.
So trying to get somebody to place khakis and a button down or jeans and a t-shirt from the 70s, yeah.
Right. Well, I mean, because, like, here's the thing, is that I feel like the film was generally, up until the third act, which we're going to get to in
Sure.
detail, because we both had problems with that, I thought it was scarier happening in the modern day. So,
Oh, yeah.
like, his neighborhood that he's in is nicer than the one that we see in the present day,
Sure.
where we have the whatever. But that, to me, when I was watching it the first time through, the information I was gathering from that scene is that it's a nicer neighborhood in another part of town. which would indicate, like, it's obvious that the guy is, like, involved in this plot, that we don't know the tunnel, how long it is, where it goes, the idea that it can connect different houses and that there are, people contributing to said network of evildoers that's kind of crazy is way scarier to me. And it almost became scarier to me when I didn't realize what this guy's place was, that there could be a sequel where they, tell the involvement, because obviously he's up to no good, sneaking in windows, like doing all of the, like, nefarious things. And there's a little bit of a hint that one of the characters says, like, oh, he, captured all of these women, or so-and-so captured all these women so long ago. And, but it's really hard to take that one-off line, the montage of this guy up to no good, obviously, and a sick guy in a bed who looks nothing like the guy who's running around. Yeah,
again, like, a cut to... Because he was wearing... I say Ed, but as in the, like, General Ed.
Right.
Like, so he's wearing, like, a jumpsuit with the Ed moniker.
Which also hasn't changed in 40, 50 years.
Which, again, yeah, exactly. But even a cut to that. So, like, if he was in bed... Wearing the Ed jumpsuit, what I mean? That even could have helped. But I want to say he was just, like, in bed clothes. Like, he was just in bed rags.
Right.
Like, it wasn't even... I wouldn't even say really pajamas or an outfit. Like, he just looked like he was in rags.
Yeah, just an old man. And I mean, maybe it was the same actor, but they didn't do a good enough job, like, cluing in, like, on a ring that, like, he's still wearing, or, like, anything.
Yeah, because he doesn't even have dialogue, the old man.
I think he says, like, one word or something, but, like, he's obviously struggling, and, like, you're right, there's no dialogue, there's no nothing. So I felt like, I think the writer or the director has said, one, there will be no sequels, and two, that was the guy in the bed is that.
Yeah, it is the memory.
But since it's not, like, in the film itself, and it's not generally stated, in my version of the film, which is way more interesting, that guy exists out there, and that tunnel just goes on forever.
Right. Yeah, so, like, well, there could have been two endings to that film that I feel like would have made it much more scary, which is, so...
Before we get on, like, you're going to talk about Mama now, right?
No.
Oh, okay.
So, well, I was going to say, so before the first, like, hard cut to the, like, I'll say Malibu scene.
Sure.
Is where I guess Mama, right? Or the director actually calls it the mother.
Sure.
So the mother comes out and it just does a hard cut to the Malibu scene.
Sure.
So to me, a much scarier ending would have just been a repeat of that ending. So it would have almost been two different short films that had the same ending. Does that make sense?
How so?
So the Malibu guy goes to the house, right? And then if he goes down the tunnel...
It's the same. It's
the same cut ending where as soon as Mama comes out, or the mother... I don't
like that ending nearly as much. So I feel like before we get into the ending, I kind of want to get into the director's intentions. Because, like, his whole thing is that men and women see danger in life differently based upon, like, how we deal with threats and potential dangers. So the film starts out with these two people, and they are double booked at, like, an Airbnb type thing. I think it's not an Airbnb, it's like an Airbnb adjacent. I think they specifically didn't say Airbnb, so they would get sued by Airbnb. Sure. But, I think it's like the film version of Airbnb. But, like, they mentioned Airbnb, but, like, no, it was a different app. Like, okay, fine. But anyways, they both booked the same house for the same night. So the woman comes up and is like, hey, I booked here. And the guy's like, so did I. Why, what makes you so special? He's like, why don't you just come in and sleep on the couch?
Right.
So, he's going to sleep on the couch and give her the bed. So, it's raining, it's Detroit, there's no way she's going to get another hotel, everything's booked because there was some sort of convention in town. Right.
It makes a pretty good, like, ploy or argument for why she really has to stay.
Right.
Like, bad weather, it's dark, it's late, she's tired.
It's just easier to just give in and stay. Which, I think there were supposed to be subtle hints that he was rapey or potentially a threat, even though ends up he's not.
Right.
Which I kind of get. Like, I mean, but I also feel like in that situation, he's, as the male in that situation, I feel like there's a different realm of threats. Like this, I feel like the notion that men are just like, yeah, whatever, fuck it, is a little not true because, like, I feel like having a woman share your space, if you don't lock the door and she walks in, like there's like a level of allegation that can happen where you will get no say.
Sure.
And because we've created this environment where it's all about how she feels or how like she, interpreted something.
Sure.
Well,
he makes a comment about it because he said, "Well, I poured you a drink, and I totally get why you don't want to drink it because you didn't see me pour it. So I'm not trying to roofie you." Like he makes a couple of comments on like, "Hey, like I'm not trying to." Force you to do anything. Like, don't think that I'm whatever because you didn't see me pour it.
Sure.
I'll even open this new bottle.
Sure.
And you can watch me pour it if you want to.
Sure. I mean, my point is like when you have weapons in the mix, the characteristics between male and female go away. Like, I don't care if you have like whoever you think is the ultimate male, like Arnold Schwarzenegger in the '80s,
sure,
and little old granny with a gun.
Right.
Little old granny with a gun is gonna shoot him dead.
Yeah.
Like, so I feel like in these kind of situations when they make this thing, like the answer I always give is like just have a gun or a knife or whatever. Like,
sure.
That's like the first place my mind goes. But second off is there's a fair amount of tension, and I like the misdirect there because like you're thinking it's between those two, and like I knew there was a twist coming, so I kind of feel like the obvious thing isn't going to be the twist. Like the obvious thing isn't going to be like, and he's really a serial killer, rapist, whatever, scumbag. So like, but then she gets locked into the basement, and she finds, basically like there's a hidden door, and she goes in, and there's a room that just is wrong. Like it looks like there was somebody tied to a bed for too long. There's like bodily fluid stains all over the mattress, and a video camera in the room. Which also, like from a technical, practical standpoint, doesn't make sense because if you have some in a bucket's never a good thing.
Yeah.
But from a practical standpoint, like if you are leaving someone to live in a room where there's a bucket, why would you leave them an expensive video equipment that they can bash? Like typically in those situations, the cameras, it's hidden or it's like there's a hole that the camera's on the other side of. Like normally the camera isn't in there. Like that kind of killed my believability. Like this might just be a weird storage room, but also it's hidden, so weird rape room, like not a good sign. So the girl finds rape room, and right about that time, the other guy comes back and it's like, "Hey, let me out," and like she's screaming, "Hey, let's go." And the guy has the dumbest reaction.
He really does, because he makes this ploy like if they're best friends.
Right.
Like, that to me was like very, just kind of like, what? Like, if I don't know you, if I've literally only known you for 12 hours.
Right.
Even if I spent the night talking to you.
Right.
I'm like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. You do you. I'm getting the fuck out of here.
Yeah, from the girl's perspective, but even the guy, like here's the thing. Like, let's say I don't know you and we're a stranger and you come with me and you're like, "There's a weird rape room downstairs."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "Holy shit, let's get out of here." And then like, I just can't imagine being like, "Well, I didn't see it, so I need to see the rape room." Like, no, because here's the thing. Like, the rape room belongs to someone that's not us.
Right.
Like, they're like they don't. There might be security, like there might be another hidden camera, and I don't want my face on the hidden camera.
Sure.
So like some cartel bullshit.
Well, the other thing that I think that it kind of like alluded to was the whole like women are crazy, because he does give her the kind of like, you are overreacting. It's fine. Like are you sure you saw what you saw? Like he kind of gave her the like, you're overreacting, sweetheart. It's fine. It's not really there. Like, I didn't see it, so it's fine. So it kind of gives it a little bit of the like, in order for me to trust you or believe you, I really need to see it for myself, because clearly you're wrong.
I don't know. I at no point do I go into a hidden room. Like, as soon as the door opens to the hidden room and I see, like, this blacked out, like, thing, okay, I believe you. Like, you said there's a rape room back there. I don't need to actually, like, smell the fumes and, like, you know, get all of the picture here. But, so, like, the idea that he goes back there, doesn't tell her he's going back there, because I feel like if you, like it just looks ominous. So the idea that men just go into these situations headlong, like, yeah, fuck it, that doesn't exist. And then the idea that, like, there's yet another secret entrance that he pushes open and finds, and it has what can only be described as a hand-chiseled, like, stairwell to hell.
Yeah, this is not, like... So that, to me, was actually... For me, I was like, that really was the what the fuck moment.
Right.
Because I really don't care who you are, male, female, like...
Right.
Ex-combat, not ex-combat, like, whatever. Like, when you see something creepy as fuck that is hidden behind somewhere else with no lights.
Right.
Because this wasn't like a hand-chiseled, like, tunnel to hell that's well lit. This isn't like
built in. This
isn't like a mine with lights, you know, every so often. This is like dark. Mm-hmm. Completely dark. And you're telling me that you're gonna walk in with no flashlight,
right? No
knife, no nothing, and just to like check it out.
Because for funsies, that's what we do with our time. I mean, especially knowing there's a rape room, like with bad intentions. Like my first thought wasn't what it ended up being, but my thought was like, the cartel owns this and maybe others, and they come here and they do shit and. Like, the last thing you want to deal with is, like, cartel people. Like,
sure. Well, you're talking about Detroit also. This is not like, you know, the best, you know, all the good things happen here.
Right.
Like, no. Like, this, and it's in the seedy part of the town.
Right.
Like, everything is super run down. I mean, even the girl, before this happens, gets run down by, like, a homeless man. Who's trying to tell her, like, hey, don't go in there. And she's freaking out because some rando...
Why is this homeless man talking to me?
Yeah.
Sure. I don't know. So, once you have that established, that, like, obviously, as soon as I saw the stairwell to hell, which is basically what I'm going to call it, the suspension of disbelief that anyone would go down there or be stupid enough to go down there is out the window for me.
Sure, but then she follows him.
Which, like, I don't care, like, I told you this during, like, I don't care, like, I love you, you're my wife.
Sure.
If you went down there because you were stupid, I'd be like, sucks to suck, I'm getting the police, and we can go down together after you.
Yeah.
But, like, she's sitting there, she stands at the top of the stairs and yells down, hey, you there? Silence back. Alright, you're fucked. Just because you're dead and getting destroyed by whatever the fuck's down there doesn't mean that we both do, because we got kids to raise. Like even you, I'm not going down after you. Like, that is a level of stupid that, like, we both don't have to fucking die a stupid death. Like...
Yeah, like, I mean, even then, it would have been much more believable had they been best friends. Like, they're best friends for life, and the movie makes, you know, some kind of like, what is it called? Like, it alludes to the fact that they've been friends forever, and they're like,
and one's like doing stupid shit.
Like, what is it that ride or die? Like, oh, you're my ride or die friend. Like, I can do any amount of stupid, and you'll follow me to, you know, hell and back. Like, if it had started with that kind of relationship, then I can see the, like, even the reluctance of the girl being like, you bitch, like, I know I'm your stupid ride or die, but, like, do you really have to do this level of stupid? And going down reluctantly, even that would have made sense. But this is like, I've known you for 8 to 12 hours.
But I have to do the right thing.
I have to do the right thing to, like, save you? Not a chance.
Not a chance. And even the ride or die part I wouldn't do. Like, I don't give a fuck who you are. Die. Yeah, no, because, like, you're doing something stupid. Like, here's the thing, right? Like, if you're getting attacked by no fault of your own by the things that are down there, and I see it, and we're up here, that's not you being stupid. And I'm willing to sacrifice myself, even if, like, the odds are not in my favor.
Right.
Because I feel like, you know, I love you and, like, you know, I'm willing to do that. But, like, if you're willingly doing something that is stupid,
I'm just gonna dive into this pit of spikes here.
Right, and like I think that if I dive, I can catch you and throw you. No, we're both going to die in the spikes. Like,
we're both gonna die in the spikes,
and it's going to be needless, and like you're doing something utterly
sucks
stupid.
to suck, kids. You're going to be orphans now,
right? Because your mom did something stupid, and I had to do it too. Like like she drank the Clorox, and I thought if I did it too, no, this is no. But what? So the one thing that I thought was a really great detail.
Yeah.
She gets down there and he's bit and scared to death. And like she's saying, like, look, we just go back this way and we get out. And she's like, no, that's where they are. So like what makes that so scary as a piece of like 3D mapping is that it tells you that there are ins and outs of the tunnel that we haven't seen. Right? Like the fact that like if you think of the tunnel that we see on screen as a straight line.
Right.
And you start from A and you start heading towards B, and the person from B is heading towards A. And you're like, let's go back to A. And he's like, no, that's where they are. Which means that there's like circles and like loop-de-loops.
Yeah, it makes it sound like this is a very complex tunnel system that you are not privy to.
Sure.
Like now you're in the maze mentality.
Right.
Like the labyrinth and that stuff. That's scary.
Right.
Like, when you think labyrinth, you're like, I'm really screwed here.
Right. And like the people down here know it, but I don't.
Right.
But at that point, you don't know how deep it goes and what levels are. So like to me, when you have an unknown, like you're now in the what's the word? Like in maze, like tunnel land.
Sure.
Like the fact that you have Mama, the reason why I thought there could be sequels is like she's like first layer of hell.
Right. And you don't know how many more staircases go down.
Because like when there's an escape later, they find the guy in the bed, and then they find like the videotapes that allude to the rape room, and then we don't see it, which I also thought was like masterful because like there's just we don't know what we don't know, and the more that we don't know, the scarier that concept is. And I think that if you created a sequel that's like level 2, and like you don't like say level 2's it.
Right, because at that point you're in the like
unknown.
Well, what is it that elevator thing where like you don't know how many floors the elevator goes up, and when the elevator drops, like you don't know how far you're dropping either.
Right.
So like all of that, for a scary movie,
I think that was perfect.
That was perfect.
What killed it for me was they escape because of course they have to, and they have the second guy who's kind of rapey and all the things, like all the worst traits.
Right.
And
who, by paradox, was completely almost joyous. Like if he could have skipped down those steps, he would have skipped. Like that to me was actually
the best part of the movie.
Because
he's the only character that I believe their motivation for going down the tunnel, because he's so stupid and so full of himself and so narcissistic that he's like, this is square feet that I can sell my house, because he's like, money hungry, because he's got to pay rape lawyers for
actually raping somebody.
Right.
Like,
Right.
And he's just like so foolhardy.
Oh yeah, like great. Like I'm like like he's skipping down with his little tape trying to measure like how much he has. Yeah, no, I think that's
like that was brilliant.
It was brilliant. It was like because like you're gonna like the suspension of disbelief that there's a third idiot that would actually go down there, but you actually made someone that stupid, and then like once you buy into how stupid they are, you're like, yeah, I buy that they're that
absolutely 100%.
But when they escape and like. You basically have Mama, or the mother, whatever you want to call her, is indestructible. She gets hit by a car, no broken bones. She gets shot, no problem. I don't remember if she gets stabbed, but like there's a scene where she breaks through a wall, rips a guy's arm out of his socket.
I mean, she's Terminator, is what I'm hearing. Like, which is sad to me that this happens, because she's supposed to be like. And I don't mean this in an insulting way, but she's supposed to be like an inbred retard.
Right.
Like, in actuality, not as an insult or...
And you can have retard strength. Like, retard strength is a real thing.
Right. But at no point are you Terminator.
Right.
Like, this idea that you can just arbitrarily make characters the Terminator in movies, and that, like like, yeah, you could just rip a person's arm off.
Because it looks cool.
Because it looks cool. Like,
there was no suspense in that last bit.
Yeah, like because really at the last point, like, I check out. Because I checked out because I was like, basically, we're dealing with the inbred retard Terminator.
Right, who eventually will be conquered. And, the conquering will not make any more sense than when they couldn't conquer her. And, there's no stakes at play. Where I thought they could have gone better is, like we've said before, what the ending should have been is she sneaks in, she can still kill the guy. Or, the one thing that you said that I thought was really interesting is if she took his eyes.
If she took...
The black guy's eyes. The homeless guy who's sitting there talking to the guy. So he's just sitting there screaming.
Oh, yeah, so she just goes on a maiming spree and just maims everybody.
Right.
But, maims them in a way that they're just incapacitated and crying and moaning. Because, nothing is scarier than just having, a string of, people who are crying. Just this path of destruction.
Right, and the other one that got me is he pushes the girl off of, what did we say, it was 3 stories?
It's like a water tower, so the rapey guy...
Right.
And he doesn't just push her, he grabs her from in front of him and does this,
He picks her up.
Yeah, a Superman swing, and, swings her over. I mean, this guy is maybe, what, in movie standards, he's, 5'8" to 5'10".
Maybe 170, 180
Yeah,
pounds,
and he's supposed to pick up an injured, crying, crawling...
Dead weight.
Yeah, exactly. Injured, crying, crawling, dead weight person off the ground and just, fling her off the edge of a 3-story water tower.
3 or 4 stories, which she falls and the mother jumps, and they both survive the fall because, right on the concrete, because that's a thing.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about, the whole physics of it. Had they landed in grass, even. Had they just landed in grass and, you could see them rolling, oh, okay.
This is a hard splat.
Right, this is a hard splat. And there's a good 2 to 3 seconds where they really zoom in on the rapey guy's face because they want him to kind of wrestle with the morality of what he just did. And the whole time, the 2 women are just laying there dead.
Right.
Until, lo and behold, not dead.
Both fine.
Fine.
I feel like it would have been a more poignant ending if it just ended there.
Oh my god, that would have been fantastic.
For a horror movie standard,
from a horror movie standard, yeah, absolutely. Because really, nobody wins. Especially if the black guy is crying. The black guy...
He doesn't care. He's not going to go call the cops for the black homeless guy.
Yeah.
Because the cops already didn't give a shit when they showed up earlier. So the idea that they're going to even respond to this dude is non-existent.
So so he kills the monster, he kills the innocent, and then he leaves the bystander to just basically be maimed, and he just walks away with...
Right, because I feel like assuming that there's more evil in the layers of the hell that we haven't got to yet, because we've alluded in my version of the film where it's not the guy in the bed earlier, you've alluded to layers that we haven't gotten to yet,
which would have been perfect, because let's say that they ended the movie there, where he's just wrestling with the morale, but the best part of that sequel cut would have been the ending credits is him selling the house. With the added square footage, but not ever mentioning the monster. So as a sequel standpoint, this guy just sold the house, got his however many dollars to pay off his lawyer, and never mentioned...
No, nothing. That would have been amazing, because then... the sequel starts with this family, this young family.
Yeah, moving in with no clue. And
a little baby in tow or something.
Oh my god, fantastic.
Yeah.
That would have been...
Yeah, that's a perfect sequel.
Yes.
But instead, you just made the monster so unbelievable, I don't care anymore.
Yeah.
And then when I find out that the little other... Because the other scene works perfectly if it's not the 70s. If that's just run down...
Oh yeah, if that's just some other guy that happens to also use the tunnels to fuel this helldom. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I always think that there's this one movie that I love that you'll never watch because it's awful. It's a French film, and there's this gay club where like they do all sorts of BDSM whatever, and they call it the rectum, and they go in, and it's just like depravity and like yeah, like that's what I think of when I think of that tunnel. It's like, yeah, that's like the Detroit's rectum. That's what that.
Yeah, that movie had a lot of potential. It wasn't a bad movie, like definitely worth watching. But you get to the end and you really think like this could have gone so many other ways than what it actually did.
Right, and I honestly feel like if they had just elongated the suspense of her mumbling around down there, and then they get there and immediately die, and you have no idea what the fuck just happened, and it's just like the lady like crawling through the thing and like smash, like because just the idea that just evil exists somewhere to that extreme, but we're not going to explain it, is way scarier than Terminator Mama.
Yes, yeah, because as soon as you explain it, you're done because you've lost your. You've lost your edge because really what makes scary movies scary is the imagination. It's not the movie.
Did you research democracy yet?
Oh gosh, no.
Okay. So I gave you plenty of time. A couple days.
No, we talked about this yesterday.
We talked about it.
Yesterday morning.
It was written down since Sunday. You just, didn't show up to the meeting.
I mean, I was present at the meeting. Incapacitated, but present.
Yeah, like that. So anyways, one of the things we want to do is just have a debate about the pros and cons of democracy at large as an institution. So
sure.
I will state my case since you don't have one, apparently.
Well, so I feel like, especially when it comes to politics, like you really do need to like talk about what it is because
define terms.
Well, yeah, I mean, because by and large, really, people don't know.
Okay.
So, like, we're going to talk about democracy versus a constitutional republic. Like, we need to get into the finer things.
Sure, and I wasn't even going to get totally into the constitutional republic of this, though I will to some degree because that's what we actually have in this country right now. But just to talk about the downfalls of democracy. So every country or civilization that's used democracy has had a huge downfall in ever. So really the two big ones are Rome and Greece. So both countries, when they adopted democracy, they had a peak period and then a steep off a cliff problem. So when you have a democracy like started, what you have is we believe we've created a culture that we believe is good enough that we can govern ourselves. So therefore, we all should get a vote in our part in things. So that's how democracies typically start.
Sure, one vote per person.
Right, but what ends up happening is there's pandering to cities because, like, very quickly, and this is, you can go back to the speeches of Cicero back in Roman times.
Sure.
That what ends up happening is if you, one, only placate to the cities, you'll win elections because that's where people congregate. And two, the problems of the city are not the problems of the rural communities. So the rural communities, what their needs are, they end up almost becoming slaves.
Sure. To
the point that, like, where we are in Maryland, most of the vote for the entire state, in terms of like state politics, comes from Baltimore, Annapolis, and the surrounding D.C. areas. We live in a very rural community. So one of the things that they've done is there's like rainwater tax. Like there's water tax where you have to pay extra for acreage or for having land because there's no way that such a small population could ever not like stand up for themselves.
Right. Well, I mean, it really becomes just a popularity contest.
Right.
Like, I think this has been said before plenty of times that democracy really is like grown-up version of your high school president vote, which is basically popularity contest, which is how many people can I get to listen to me and how well can I make myself be liked?
Sure.
I mean, that's really what a democracy ends up boiling down to.
Right, but more so than that, it's what you can promise the people in terms of services and bread and circus, or, whatever you're going to promise.
Sure, and who has the most money to make this circuit?
Right.
Like, who has the most money to actually run around the country
Right.
and promise all these things and do all these things? Because let's be honest, if you don't have money, you could be the greatest leader ever.
Which leads back into the idea that you're going to have corruption to begin with to start this process, and then you're going to, in order to afford and make it worth it to spend that money to go across the country, you need something on the back end to pay for all the things and make it
Right.
worthwhile, which is, in modern times, all the deals with banks and all the other bullshit. But like at the time, I'm sure there was other things going on that created that. And what they're saying is when you just do a flat vote, you have problems.
Sure.
So the way a constitutional republic works is that the power of a vote is different for different areas. So the way it works here is we have both the Congress and the Senate. And you have to pass both, and they're weighted differently. So the Congress is purely based upon population.
Right.
So, if you come from like a really populated area like New York, you have a lot of congressmen from New York City.
Right.
Like, so many blocks, you get a congressman. So many blocks, you get a congressman. And there's really not a lot of difference in thought between the different boroughs, between, your
Right.
neighbor 4 blocks over doesn't probably have many different concerns and thoughts than you do. However, in the Senate, you have a place like, I think Wyoming is the least populated state by area, by population density, and if you look at them, like they still get 2 votes in the Senate. So like the number of people who would vote for a senator from Wyoming is very minimal.
Right.
So therefore, like the needs of that area matter just as much as like all of New York City and a lot of New York State.
Right.
For one senator there. So their concerns are held in higher regard. You also have, at least in the United States, more unpopulated areas than you have populated areas.
Which I think a lot of people really do forget.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you come from a big city,
Mm-hmm.
you really do forget that there are just wide areas of land where you are driving for an hour before you hit a city.
So I want to say there's something like 1,200 counties in the United States, and only like 60 of them are Democrat.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, your Democratic cities are going to be your big cities. So, for example, you mentioned Baltimore and Maryland. So, Baltimore and the D.C. surrounding areas show up Democratic. But everything outside of that, which by acreage far exceeds the acreage of Baltimore and the surrounding D.C. areas, is all Republican.
Sure.
But the vote counts. I mean, almost it doesn't count really, because Baltimore has enough weight by itself to really supersede the entirety of the rest of Maryland.
Correct.
The same thing happens in, let's take another big state like Texas. Same thing happens in Texas. So your blue cities come up as Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, and Austin. But all of the surrounding counties all come up Republican.
Sure.
But those 4 cities far outweigh the entirety of the state.
Sure.
Yeah, so just...
Well, I mean, and it's funny is it's like when you have all of these laws being passed upon us, like out here, like we're not particularly farmers, but like there are plenty of farms near here. So like those farmers are getting all of these taxes for their profession that only exist there because there's so few in the state that like they can't stand up for themselves.
Right.
So, things are much more expensive here, and yet all of the people in Baltimore, in DC and whatever, like they want their, granola-y, what are you going to call it, organic, locally sourced foods which is the farms out here. Like these are the
right.
people.
If you're talking about local, it's going to be local to them. So if you're in Baltimore, D.C.,
right.
you're looking at farms really in Maryland, West Virginia, maybe Upper Virginia.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, but I'm saying like we constitute as part of that. Like
Sure.
I'm not saying that we're the only ones. Yes, there's farms in Virginia, West Virginia, maybe
Probably
even Pennsylvania.
I was going to say Lower Pennsylvania, what I would consider local.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah, but I would consider that local to here. But my point is like this is what you're talking about, and yet you're like, it doesn't really matter, all the things. But then there's like all of these weird rules and regulations about what you can charge for a carrot or for whatever. And now we got the food shortages and all the things that like where they're burning factories so that like food can't get to things, so the prices are driving up.
Yeah. Or just the post-COVID world in general, where there's stock shortages of like dog food, just still weirds me out.
Right.
I mean, it's been 2 years since COVID, and I still can't guarantee that I will be able to get dog food consistently at the grocery store.
Right, like we have a general rule that like we like a particular brand, so whenever it's in stock, we buy everything they have. And with the idea being that if we go 2 or 3 trips in a row and they have it, we're not going to buy it every time.
Right.
But like the thing is, every time we buy the store stock, which typically is only like 4 bags, that's on the shelf when we get there, it'll be 2 or 3 weeks before they have it in stock again.
Right. So I want to say like our general rule is we want a full container plus 1 full bag. That's like unopened.
Right. So like a container, like we have like a dog food bin that's like this huge plastic container. So like it takes about 2 to fill it, plus to have 1 extra. So yeah,
and we went I want to say almost 5, maybe 6 weeks without being able to buy dog food.
Right.
I want to say it was almost 6.
Yeah.
We were panicking.
Well, that last week before it got back in stock, we were getting wet food to supplement because we were like scraping the bottom of the barrel to kind of stretch that out because we didn't want to change the dog's diet.
Yeah, and that's because we even cut them down to one feeding a day, which neither of the dogs were happy about. Like they were just...
Right, but it's almost like you get what you get, you don't complain.
You don't throw a fit, the post-COVID politics even is kind of weird to me.
Right.
Because everything it's just a little skewed.
Sure.
Everybody, politicians a lot want to talk about the post-COVID and getting, things back to pre-COVID, and that...
I don't think it's going to happen.
I don't think it's ever going to happen.
There's so many, I just feel like I feel like we're getting off the topic of democracy.
Sure.
But I feel like what's going on now with, the post-COVID whatever, is they've just increased everybody's tolerance for bullshit. To where, just recently they've passed this, digital currency for the dollar that's supposed to take effect next year.
Ooh.
And...
That's scary.
And it's not on the news. And I'm not trying to, make a comment on Trump specifically, but, he's this lightning rod of you either really hate him and you want to hear about how he's going to jail, or you really like him and you want to hear about how he's going to do all the great things and how he's, polling for the next election.
Yeah, it's one or the other. Nobody ever just thinks, that guy.
Yeah, just,
No.
Right, so my point is they keep talking about that, and that's all, between January 6th and that and a couple of other things, that's all that's on the news, and yet they pass all this crap, and it's what I tell people my politics are, is that when Trump was in office, the 2 largest spending bills in U.S. history to that time went through on 2 different dates. The first date was the Kavanaugh hearing, and the second date was Trump's first impeachment hearing. And, that's all that was in the news was those 2 stories. You have to understand that they're lightning rod stories.
Right. Because everybody wants to know as much as they can about that to the exclusion of other information.
A boring spending bill about fiscal policy?
No. But tell me about that other thing.
Right. There's sex in that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I really want to know about.
Right.
How the government is... We're already in debt. I know we're in debt. That's just noise.
Right.
Yeah.
But the fact that, like, that's what I was talking about earlier, is whatever the news omits is where the story is.
Right, yeah. So they just passed this currency bill, which really is going to allow the government to deny purchases, which brings into question the social scoring.
Right.
Which is, so you've got good social score, you've got a good social standing, the government will allow you to spend your money on things that the government approves of. But if you have a bad social score, or if you're trying to buy things the government doesn't approve of, they can stop you from doing
like you
that.
buy a gun, or like you buy ammunition. Here's the other one that got scary to me, is like, we just went through a lockdown. And every business owner I know of who shut down during that has basically said never again. That was stupid, that was a waste of time, that didn't help anything.
Sure.
Because, like, you were not more likely to get COVID at my store than you were at Walmart or Target, that were considered essential, but my local grocery store wasn't. Like fuck the hell off. But more importantly, it's like you can't march for Trump, but you're allowed to riot because racism is like all the bullshit.
Yeah.
Like all of the like blatant bullshit that they were sending. And so, like I don't think they could ever mandate a lockdown again. But if they say, like, oh, we're from Western Maryland, if you go to the wrong county, you're traveling, and we're going to shut your bank account down. Yeah. So you can't buy a ticket.
You can't buy gas.
You can't buy gas more than a couple of gallons so that you can get around town in only so many days. Like, only so many gallons for whatever.
Sure. Well, they put They put a geofence around you, so you can buy gas, but only in your county. Right. And if you buy gas out of your county, you can only buy a gallon, because you just need to get back to your county. And then once you're in your county again, buy all the gas you want. Right. Like, that to me is, just dystopian future.
Well, like, what was crazy to me is that there was, in Australia, this is a real thing that happened. Like, just the first thing, they had all the, like, concentration camps where they would send people who didn't want to close down or, like, whatever, and they literally sent them to the camps. They also mandated that everyone have a cell phone. As law, you have to have a smartphone. And you had to download this government app that tracked you and tracked your location. You were not allowed to travel outside of the whatever. But here's the thing. It also got to see what was, like, going in and out, and, like, monitor all of your, like, data on your phone. And here's the really scary part to this.
Sure.
And I want to be clear, like, all of the people who are in opposition, like the strong political oppositions to this is a horrible idea, they were forced to download this app, and immediately kiddie porno found on their phone.
Oh, of course.
And it's like, look, by no means, if you know me, am I in any ways defending if that's accurate. But the idea that...
Across the board, unanimously, all of the people who opposed,
that you have, the government now has a backdoor into your whatever, and now they have this, like, mechanism to silence any political opposition is crazy. It's just crazy.
Well, that's the baseline to... I don't even know how many, like, countless dystopian fictional stories of, like, the government now has full access and control and authority over everyone's narrative. And lo and behold, anybody who ever opposes the government now has their narrative hijacked, and they are liars, murderers, thieves.
Because the government would never do anything like plant evidence.
Absolutely not.
Right. Because, like, I love how, like the idea that, like, a cop planted evidence on somebody is totally believable because it's a person. Like, his name's Jerry and he works for the police department. But, like, the government at large always has because they're not made of people.
No. They always have your best interest at heart. Right. Never would they ever,
just never.
Contrive a story to, have people look the other way.
Okay. But back to the democracy debate.
Sure.
So... the constitutional republic, I feel like, does a little bit to kind of offset power. Mm-hmm. But what I'm seeing with the far left, and I'm going to try and do my best to say, like, I'm not trying to make a left or right argument, but, like, I would consider myself a right-leaning centrist. And I believe that the center is generally, like, where you want things to be.
Sure, well, all things in moderation.
Correct. I feel like the far left, as it gets into not just socialism, but like straight communism, and I don't really see a difference between fascism and communism, which I feel like is its own conversation.
Sure.
But when I see where we're going here, that, you know, you have the government, the left wants a bigger government. So the government sponsors the left to train people in schools and in education and like state-run colleges that the left is the right thing to get people to vote, to give more money back to the government. And it's like, you know, you just see all of these things, this growing entity where there's less and less checks and balances. They've done everything they can to be as unconstitutional as possible.
Right.
They're blatantly throwing all of these things out there, and I feel like they've created dumb people. They've created them through the education system. Like, not only are they teaching about how great leftism is, but they're also like not teaching math. They're not teaching history. They're not teaching context.
The one that gets me like every time that I'm always going to bring up is critical thinking.
Right.
Like the moment that critical thinking was removed from the school curriculum, at that point, like, how could you possibly convince me that the school board has a child's best interest in mind when they're pulling out critical thinking?
Well, probably one of the things that's maybe the most upsetting to me is the fact that it is now, at least in the state of Texas, practically illegal to talk about the Holocaust in schools anymore. And I know that it gets into a little bit more detail and nuance, but...
Yeah, so it's not like technically illegal, it's just really difficult.
Sure.
So in order for you to teach that the Holocaust occurred, you have to teach both sides, being that you have to teach why it was bad and why it was good. And so really this is in an attempt to stalemate the teachers into really just not teaching it. So in essence, if we make it so uncomfortable for the teachers to teach about the Holocaust, they won't teach it. Because very, very few teachers are willing to stomach creating a lesson plan, and it has to be an equal measure, that has why the Holocaust was good and why the Holocaust was bad. And also provide the literature for the children to read. So if they are provided one book for why the Hitler was bad, they also have to be provided one book on why it was good. Which is ridiculous.
It's totally ridiculous because then they're just not learning about it.
Right, because teachers just can't stomach it. And I mean, and I don't mean to say this as like teachers can't stomach it as like, oh, you know, bad teachers. But like realistically, who could? Like, who can really sit there in front of a group of children and say like, yay, Hitler?
Yeah, because the other point here is like in our current thing where kids constantly, like there's a whole YouTube and TikTok trend where it's just teachers being cringy. Like where you know, the kid pulls out their smartphone and they record it, and it's like, you know, if you're saying something to the effect of like, Hitler was Hitler right to kill all those Jews? You know, like Mort 5, what do you think? Like, if you take it to that level where you're saying that's a good thing, and it's recorded, I'm willing to bet the same, Board of Education that made you do it to begin with is not going to have your back. You're just going to be fired outright. Which is what I would imagine every teacher is thinking in trying to create a curriculum, because it's such a tightrope of, you know, anti-Semitism, you know, anti-black, anti-whatever. I mean, all the people that Hitler massacred. Well,
I mean, not just that, but like, even just getting yelled at by parents.
Right.
Like, there are so many hills that teachers die on the daily.
Sure.
With parents calling in, why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And I demand that you do this for my kid.
Why are you teaching me to
And now, and now you want to have parents call in and say, you know, you told my kid that Hitler was good? Mm-hmm. Like, on a list of things that teachers really want to be nailed to, you know, to the cross for, probably not that.
Right, but... You know, the thing for me that when I think about my education system before college, before just reading, you know, books and things on my own, is we had to read the Diary of Anne Frank, and we would read, like, the textbook, which would typically be only 4 or 5 pages about World War II. And, yeah, the Holocaust happened, and essentially what they said in the books is, well, Hitler really hated some Jews. So he took over the country so he could get all the Jews together so he could kill them. The whole reason that Nazism existed was just a big old Jew killing. And like once he...
Yeah, it was really like he was personally affronted
right, so,
by the Jewish community.
But he was also going to conquer the world extensively if his only platform was to kill the Jews. He just wanted to make sure he got all the Jews. That there weren't some Jews somewhere else in the world hiding. And then a bunch of battles happened, and here's some dates to remember for these battles. And, you know, as a historian and as somebody, you know, who's been in the military, and like, I think these things are important. But I also don't think that they are important to a normal person's development as a citizen. Like, the fact that you remember that June 6th is D-Day or something like that, I don't think matters. What does matter, and what's far more interesting and far scarier to me, is how the Nazis took power and in less than a decade took full control over the government, radicalized it completely, and within 4 or 5 years after taking control fully, set them on the path to war and started rounding people up.
And see, that to me is astounding, because you really want to, at least I do, like when I think about all the things that happened in my mind, like it seems like it went on for so much longer. Like, oh, it was like, you know, 30, 40, 50 years. Like, no, this was like a very short time period. And what really just boggles my mind is people who can remember literally living in Germany, being a German citizen, and, you know, their 20s and 30s are taken up by this kind of weird event. Where all of a sudden their world turns upside down, and then like, oh, we're just expected to go back to normal, and like that to me is very bizarre.
Well, I think people conflate World War I and World War II to think that since we fought the Germans both times, that the Germans were Nazis both times, which
they weren't.
Which they weren't. I mean, it really came down to there was a political assassination with Franz Ferdinand, and you had basically all of Europe split on the like, well, we either back the Germanic middle, or we're kind of on the outside, like the French and the British and the Russians and whatnot. So you had all of these allies basically pick a side, and they all fought each other, because right before that there had been all of these alliances that were designed to keep people from having wars. So what it really meant is once you started a war, everyone had to pile in. But if you really want to get into it, I don't think the Germans did anything morally wrong, at least compared to what everyone else was doing. Like, I don't think there was a moral side in World War I. Like, we took a side, so...
Oh, I thought you were going to say in World War II, and I was like, hold on.
No, in World War I.
Oh, so yeah, in World War I, it really was a world war. Without necessarily morality included. It was a bunch of people,
politics.
Yeah, it was straight politics. It was just a bunch of people not agreeing. And World War ensued. And we had allies in France and Britain that were on the same side, so we supported our allies. But it really, like, there wasn't like they're massacring people and there are all of these horrible things. They just, happened to be on the other side of a war that was, again, very politically motivated, but... World War II, completely different story. Like, that one was a very morally charged... event. Like, that was...
And again, you have the Germans who, even through World War I, were, a very civilized society, a very moral society, a lot of great philosophy and art and things were coming from Germanic areas. And then you essentially have someone who came in and, like, what they did is they had a secret police before the SS became, like, whatever, they had what were called black shirts, which were basically what Antifa is now. And they would go through the cities, and if you were to disagree with them publicly, you'd just be attacked on the street. So everyone was afraid to speak out. And then the black shirts got into all the school systems, and if you even disagreed publicly in a, in a school setting, in a class, you'd be found and accosted and beat and shamed. Which
is what's happening now. Like all of these parent-teacher, PTA meetings, parent-teacher conferences, not the conferences that happen privately, but the assembly ones where the parents come in and they talk to the school board or the teachers at large. There have been a series of parents going in, voicing their concerns, and then being publicly attacked, humiliated, defamed, lost their jobs because they went and told the school district, I don't want or I don't think that what you're doing is moral. And and then it's a career killer. It's a reputation killer for the parent. And so now the parents don't even want to go and speak up, which weirdly then leads to this resurgence.
Everyone agrees. Well, then everyone agrees.
Well, then everybody agrees, but on the back end, it's leading to a resurgence of homeschoolers.
Right.
Because if you can't publicly disagree,
mm-hmm.
and you don't want to agree,
right.
your only option then is to step out.
Right. And I think what's really interesting that's come out during all of this is one of the things from COVID is people were schooling from home. So you're on I always call it Skype. I know that's not the main one anymore, but the video call.
I gotcha.
So, you're on Skype and they're trying to teach 8-year-olds about trans and sexualism and all the things. And parents are freaking out. And they're like, why are you teaching this to my 8-year-old? Why is there something about sex parties and all of this weird, homosexual subculture? And they're like, well, you're just mad that it's homosexual. I'm like, look, it could be straight subculture. They don't need to hear about straight dungeons either. You know what I mean?
Sure.
There's just they can figure that out on their own as they're adults.
Sure. Two things happened. One was the kind of the disillusionment of what's actually being taught in school, but the other was how much time is wasted.
Right.
How much time is wasted, what is actually being taught,
sure.
and how quickly can the material be gone through.
Right.
And so that it was a twofold thing of do I really need you teaching my kid what you're teaching them? And do you really need all of this time to teach my kid this?
Sure.
It was a very eye-opening experience, I think, for a lot of parents.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely see that. But again, the idea that you can't speak out is really the thing that gets me, is because, I don't know, I was just reading something about a movie, and they were talking about things that are not going to age well in cinema. And, they were talking about whatever